Hey, so hello everyone. Welcome to our live online info session for the Diversity and Inclusion Training course at Ashton College. My name is CJ McGilvery. I'm with the Marketing and Communications team at Ashton College. Very excited to have you all here today. I'm joined by some colleagues. We have Rika, who is handling all of the technical aspects of our session today. She will also be speaking on behalf of admissions to answer any questions you might have about that process. And we have Sharon, who's the instructor for our Diversity and Inclusion Training course. So welcome both of you. Thanks so much for joining me. A couple notes for our attendees. We have lots of ways that you can engage with us during this session, whether you're on Zoom, Facebook Live, or if you're watching on YouTube after the fact. On Zoom, we do have a chat box function where you can ask questions. We also have a Q&A box. We will take time to answer those questions at the end of the session. On Facebook Live, please feel free to use the comment section. We will be monitoring those so that we can get your comments and your feedback and your questions during the session. If you are watching on YouTube, you can always leave us a comment there, or you can email us at ceinfo@ashtoncollege.ca or give us a call at 604-891-1256 or toll free 1-866-759-6006. So those are all our housekeeping notes. Very excited to have you all here. And I think before we move into the interview portion, we do have a little promo video for the course to share with you. So I'll let Rika cue that up for us. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rika. Just a little taste of what to expect with the course, but let's hear it from the instructor. Sharon, thank you again for joining us today. I have a ton of questions I'm very excited to ask you about the course and your experiences. I always like to start off. Could you just share a little bit about your kind of career and educational backgrounds as they relate to diversity and inclusion and how you came to teach this course at Ashton?
Absolutely. So I have quite a diverse background, both in education and experience. So my diversity and inclusion career, I guess, really started in 2005, but I'd been working around culture, inclusivity, harassment, these types of older terms since about 1996. So quite a vast career. And then, of course, in education, I took courses from all kinds of colleges and universities on related or directly involved subject matter in human development, in psychology, in law, and all of the other aspects, organizational culture. Since about, I think my first course was in 1997.
Okay.
In employment law. So yeah, quite a few years, quite a few different experiences. And then of course my most recent just in 2019. So yeah, trying to keep up with everything as we go along.
Amazing. So you've actually been actively studying for around 20 years and continually taking courses. That's amazing.
All about people and culture in the workplace. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So let's dive right in. I have some contextual questions to start us off. My first question is, how do you model diversity and inclusion in the actual online classroom? Do students have the opportunity to share their correct pronouns, or do you do a land acknowledgement, or are there any other kinds of things that you do within the classroom?
Somehow I got muted. I apologize. So yes, so we don't necessarily, we talk about pronouns and the purpose of pronouns, proper use of pronouns, and if and when a student wishes to declare their pronouns, then that's something that we absolutely welcome. experiences, depending on the size of the class. If it's 30 to 35 people, then a little bit less of the actual experience gets to be shared. So in those smaller classes, then we get to share quite a bit of our own experiences, students' life experiences, as well as professional ideas about the subject matter. So it's kind of a shared wisdom amongst the entire group.
Amazing. It sounds like there's a lot of sharing of ideas, instructor learning from students, students learning from instructor, a lot of back and forth that way.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what are some of the key topics that are covered in the course?
Oh my goodness. So there is a lot that's covered in the class. In fact, people that are in the current course right now are saying, wow, there's so much that I've learned, so much that I didn't know, that I didn't even consider was a part of diversity and inclusion, such as habit building within the organization. And so we talk a little bit about some of the protected characteristics. We talk a little bit about the law, where to find some of the legislation, best practices around diversity and inclusion. We learn a little bit about the research that goes into why we consider diversity and inclusion and why it's important, how it's applied in social action. And then we even cover things like, conflict resolution, communicating when there's an issue within diversity and inclusion, and then how to practically apply all of the information that people are learning.
Wow. I love that you say the practical application. That's so important, going beyond kind of the theoretical knowledge and understanding something in theory and taking it and actually being able to apply it in the workplace, in your daily life. That's kind of where the real work happens, right?
Absolutely.
So I read recently in the Washington Post that emerging professionals actually avoid companies without diversity and inclusion practices and without a commitment to tackling systemic racism in their companies. So basically, this article was arguing that diversity and inclusion is not simply a preference for, potential employees, but it's actually becoming a necessity. And companies that don't practice it are falling behind. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that and how that relates to, the future of diversity and inclusion training and the vitality of it and the necessity.
Definitely. So look, in my experience, people don't want to just show up to do an activity or a task for a wage. They want a workplace experience. They want a career legacy. And if they're not feeling included, if they're not feeling involved, if they're not feeling a part of or a cog of the, in the part of the wheel, per se, which I never get those analogies correct, so I should never use it. But if you're not really feeling a part of what's going on and that your presence matters, then you probably won't last for very long within the organization. So diversity, inclusion, and equity practices are really going to be markers within the organization as to their not only long-term success in long-term employment, their global presence, their customer base, and then who they can even hire for subcontractors. So it really is it's going to be, if not already, a part of the foundation of successful organizations.
Do you think we'll see more mandatory training happening, like within the workplace? For CEOs, will they have to get training in this in order to, keep their jobs?
Gosh, I hope so. And I hope that there's enough of us fun, engaging, practical, experienced trainers out there to really help them understand not only that it's important, why it's important, but how they can apply it to their why and what they do for business.
For sure. Amazing. So what kind of reading material is covered in the course? Do you assign articles from writers with diverse backgrounds, who can speak to their own lived experiences? Anything like that?
I do. Well, I cover some of those types of
Mhm.
readings. I also cover some research, but then it really is a student-led
Okay.
course because I really want the student to understand. And so the students at, I think it's the third class, they're asked to really consider both in networking and research, where are they getting their ideas from and their ideals? How are they basing their values, right? And then they bring that learning or that information to class, and then we can discuss it and figure out, okay, so is it valid and relevant to their application? And then how do they apply that knowledge?
Amazing. I love that that puts the focus back on the students and their experiences and their insights and where they're getting their information. I think that leads really nicely into another question that I have around. Do you have recommendations for news sources we should be tuning into, or social media, social justice advocates? Like, who should we be listening to? Where should we be getting our information from?
Definitely. So there are so many social and influential leaders in the
Mhm.
area of diversity and inclusion. One of my go-to places is my LinkedIn network
Okay.
because I know that they're professionals, because I know that they're tied in to really a purpose of organizational success and global success, social activism, social justice. And then some of the hashtags and some of the network tie-ins really let us know. So what is the topic right now? How is that topic structured? And then for the most part, the professionals who are leading in the LinkedIn area, they have that research, they have the experience beneath that to really lift it up so that we don't have to do the research, and we can trust the information that is coming across to us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think students will appreciate most about this course? I say appreciate specifically. I was going to ask what will they enjoy most, but I'm more interested in what they'll appreciate.
Yeah, I think, I'm just thinking about some of my current students'
Mhm.
comments. And again, I didn't really know what to expect coming into the class. I didn't really even understand what I didn't know about diversity and inclusion. And then you were able to make it applicable to me so that I could actually use the information. And I'm already on the ground running with it. So, yeah, I really like the fact that the value to the student is that they get real life stuff and they get to carry that away with them into their day to day.
Wow. It sounds like that it really helps the students. There's that whole area of knowledge where we don't even know what we don't know. We wouldn't even know where to begin to research on a topic if it's, brand new to us. So it sounds like this is a really good way for students to, I guess, open their minds, kind of see where they might have mental blank spots or areas where they need a little bit more training or a little bit more education. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So we go through over 100 different terms that are used in the diversity and
Okay.
inclusion world. And so again, people don't know that cognitive dissonance is a reason that people behave the way that they do, and how to make sure that our diversity and inclusion and equity statements and vision and how we act within the workplace can assist that person to really be involved.
Oh,
So yeah, a lot of information is transported in this class.
for sure. And I guess the flip side of that question, what will we appreciate most about the course? I'm really curious about what people are challenged by. Any experiences you have with this current cohort of students you have? Any real challenges that they're facing?
So my current class has all professionals, all people who are experienced in the workplace. Some are social activists. Some
Okay.
are in the C-suite of their organization. And they walk away saying, oh my gosh, my head's spinning with the amount of information that's coming out of today's class. And now we have to go and apply it and report back. So I think that the biggest challenge is that I get as an instructor, this is only 1% of what you're going to be able to do this week in real life.
Hmm.
But there are some expectations that you're here to learn. And so we're going to do our best to make that happen.
Amazing. Um, are there moments of discomfort or vulnerability with students when, especially when we're faced with new information, you know, addressing our own biases, things that we didn't know that we had a perspective on. How does that look in the classroom?
Yes, you must be brave for sure. And we talk about bravery and vulnerability at the very start. And we talk about safety, sharing, confidentiality, and trust in each other. That is probably the biggest part of our first class together. And that's because the things that we are experiencing together in the class itself are pretty tender subjects. I mean, we all have intersections of experiences where we haven't been included, where we have been othered, where we've been downright harassed or other, other negative experiences happen. And so the class, in talking about them and really being able to delve in, of course, people are able to share only what they want to share. But we learn a lot through others' experiences.
Do you talk about self-care at all? Like after the class, recommending they go for a walk or have a cup of tea to kind of decompress after dealing with heavy subject matter?
We definitely do check-ins and we take lots of breaks. So
Nice.
it's kind of like creating a new community, I think, really is the sense. And, if someone's a little bit late or if someone hasn't shown up for a class for a couple of periods for some reason, people are asking, oh, have you heard from them? Or I can see them checking in our, there's sort of a social networking group or a comment area within the classroom that's online, and you can see them checking in with each other just to make sure everybody's okay.
I mean, that goes back to my first question around how do you model diversity and inclusion in the classroom? I think that's a great example of how the students are already modeling it, considering others, making sure that everyone is included, checking up on one another. That's a really beautiful and practical example of what I was asking, basically.
Yeah, and then if somebody gets defensive or they get a little bit frustrated with something, then we deal with the human around that, and we, check in and make sure that we're dealing with human first, and then the practical system, and then the process. For sure.
What does that mean?
Our people matter.
To deal with the human first. Like, what does that mean exactly?
That means that the person matters more than everything else. And so if there's a frustration, then that's the process that they're going through to identify or disengage with an idea. And so it's always attending to the individual first and finding out, so what is this about for you? How is this relating to what it is that your experience is? Do you see an application for this in the future? And then how will you act on that?
Wow. I love that. It's really inspiring hearing your answers to all of these questions, honestly. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what students will appreciate, what they'll be challenged by, moments of discomfort. What would you say, this is a really weird question based on the topic, but what does success look like in this course? And what qualities or traits should students pursue in themselves? Whether that's like patience or open-mindedness, like how can they succeed in this course?
Well, they can succeed in the course just by having an idea about, why do I want to know about diversity and inclusion? And then is there some way that I might apply that to my life at some point, either now or in the future? And some of how that happens during the course is, wow, I never considered that. Or, yeah, I don't like the way that landed on me. And so I'm gonna challenge on that, right? And so that's that discomfort a little bit sometimes, but it's also discovery. And then once we discover, okay, well, what is this really about? Like, what's happening in the real world around this? And then do we need to consider it? Are we going to apply it? Or is it something for somebody else to do?
Wow. I love that connection, discomfort and discovery, those things kind of going hand in hand. I think everyone, can kind of relate to that phrase. Like the growth happens, and exploration and discovery happens once we step outside our comfort zone. And I can imagine it could be pretty scary entering the classroom for the first time, and having that kind of childlike mindset. I know nothing. I'm here to learn. That's a pretty vulnerable place to be, I can imagine.
It can be, and yet everybody comes with experiences. Everybody comes with expectations. So really, it's a safe place to bring all of that.
Wow. Okay, so I talked a little, about success. Does the course cover performative allyship at all? And do you have any advice for prospective students or employers in particular on how to go beyond performative allyship or performative practices of diversity and inclusion and go to the real practices?
Definitely. So in class 6, we really cover allyship and social activism and some of the activities and how they apply both in society, how long they've been applied, what they've looked like, things about how we've learned to better apply them in society and in the workplace now. And then I actually just published and loaded our final quiz, and there's a really good question about allyship in there. So, and I know that everybody's going to ace that question because we talked about it very thoroughly in class. So there are several steps, and in the class we will talk with the students, and students will be able to test it out about how they are honoring allyship within their workplace culture or within their organizational culture. And then really some cautions and risk analysis around can we within our organizational capacity support social activism, right? And so there are some legal implications on both sides. So yeah, we have to be cognizant of all of that.
Yeah, a risk assessment for how involved you can be. That's fascinating. I have a follow-up question, but I think it's going to come to me later on that subject. So the reason I was so curious about performative allyship is I think something that we see a lot, in particular on social media, is there's a bit of fear of freezing up, of not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to say the right thing in the wrong way, and just having fear about that and then saying nothing at the end of the day, and sort of being paralyzed by just not wanting to make a mistake. And I was curious if that's covered at all in the course, or what your personal perspective is on that. Like, should you just speak honestly and openly, or how do you toe that line?
Yeah, well, we all say dumb things, right? I mean, we all say things that later on we think, oh, I really didn't want to say it that way, or it didn't come across the way that I really meant it to. So we talk about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness. We talk about the importance of using slip-ups as educational or learning moments. We talk about the responses and how to deal with some of the really egregious responses that sometimes can come when we slip up. But the reality is in the mindset. And so if we have a mindset of true equity for the people involved, if we have an idea about what diversity is, which our purpose in this course is to expand that, and then about what true inclusion, community involvement really is, then sometimes the slip up is easier to recover from, right? I mean, the slippery slope, you get caught a lot faster when you have the mindset and the perspective of, I really want to be in this experience with you, rather than I'm going to create an experience and have you live it.
Yeah, quite the distinction. I love that forgiveness is covered. I think that's really, really wonderful. Yeah. Do you have any additional recommendations for either educators or employers, thinking sort of management, leadership, on some basic things that they can do to model or lead by example for building inclusion in the workplace? It's a big question.
Definitely. Yeah. So again, lots of steps and things that leaders often don't even think about. So for sure, it starts with culture, and culture starts with mission and vision and values, right? With most organizations or all organizations, it's how we live and how we promote how we live. It's our why. And so we need to start there. Why is diversity and inclusion important to us? We go through strategy development in diversity and inclusion. So really embedding it as a part of the organizational system and culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big piece. So that covers about 4 classes. So to suggest that I could give some ideas or tips in a quick session like now wouldn't be fair to the density and involvement that it is to have a diversity and include an active, purposeful diversity and inclusion program within the system. However, there are a lot of leaders now, or leaders are starting to emerge since about probably 2007. We've been able to really see them and find them easily. So diversity and inclusion consultants is probably a big part of it, because again, even my, the professionals who've been doing this work for a little while, or people who've been in organizational development for quite a bit, they're saying we had no idea as to the charter that would be needed in order to carry this out, and the timelines, and not only the cost, but the return for the organization. So really to hire either a coach or a trainer or consultant, or at least consider what some of the top people are doing, really important. And we, again, in this course, we delve into finding those people. We delve into finding the research. We delve into, is it in sports? And in sports, who are the diversity and inclusion leaders? What are they doing? How are they applying it? What are their challenges so that we don't have to make the same mistakes again, right? Or if it's in a not-for-profit organization who's dealing with food or housing insecurity. So how are we going, who are our leaders in our industry? Who are we going to be able to follow? Are they within our global context, or are they outside of our own country? How are their statistics going to match with what's going on locally? And then how do we apply?
Wow.
So big work.
Big work.
But it's fun.
Yeah, and
it's fun.
I feel like you actually really did answer that question of, at least, the starting point for leaders who have a curiosity and want to build on that curiosity. It sounds like seeking out resources is a great place to start, seeking out mentorship and guidance, and people to look up to in your industry specifically, who are, modeling great values that you want for your organization as well. And then, of course, they can take the diversity and inclusion class if they want to dive into, four whole classes on that strategy building.
Yeah. And so I don't only talk about the Canadian perspective, although Ashton is a Canadian college, or this program is running out of Canada. We have a diverse global student base. And so that's why I don't get particular, because we need to consider not only organizations such as the CCDI, which is the Canadian Center for Diversity and Inclusion, and what they model and what they recommend, but we also have to look at what does the EEOC, or what do they do in the United States? What are some of those leading organizations that have excellent models and templates, right? What's happening in the UK? What's happening in Australia? Because we have students from everywhere. So to suggest that there's only, a handful of groups or organizations that can assist in this wouldn't be fair. So really, each student, we look at, what are their needs, and where do we go from there?
Wow. That's incredible. I love that. It's something that I hear from a lot of our instructors. We have students in a whole bunch of different time zones. Sometimes they're staying up till 1 a.m. just to attend a lecture, and I'm always so blown away by their dedication to the course material.
So am I, and that's why I really want to honor them when they are in my course. I want to honor them with, here is some information that's real for you.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. I can hear that as you speak. I can really hear how you're honoring them. So I asked you, this is a big question. Maybe it's not that big a question. I asked you what the students will kind of appreciate or love most about the course. Do you have a favorite part of the course, or a favorite class or a favorite module that you just really love sharing?
Well, I mean, it all stems from social justice, and I'm also a social justice buff. I think that's why I got involved with large enterprise and large organizations and global organizations, because of that whole social justice model. And we touch on that in every class because, of course, that's where our legislation comes from in at least 5 major countries. It comes from that social justice arena. I'm also a dispute resolution professional. So I see a lot of the bad effects, the poor behaviors, the what now type of scenarios that come out of what happens when there isn't a good diversity, equity, and inclusion program within an organization. And so, again, it's about the people's experience. So every class for me is a new experience. Every set of students brings their own flavor, experience, outcomes from every class and into every class. So I think it's all just a passion work for me.
Amazing. Another question I always ask our instructors, because I love hearing the answers. What are you reading right now? Anything for educational purposes or just for pleasure, for the joy of reading?
Well, again, because it's a passion work. my recreational reading is my professional reading, and so I'm just finishing up Atomic Habits by James Clear again, because workplace process and behavior. I'm also Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. So workplace process and procedure to me is all about habit. Workplace culture is also habit, right? And then my favorite new that I'm just delving into is Think Again by Adam Grant. And he really talks a lot about culture, and he also is sort of a corporate psychology person. He really talks about, are we really doing the reason that or are we really doing what we're doing for the right reasons, right? And so, yeah, those are my 2.
That's so
right
fun.
now. Yeah, I just finished up Racing to Social Justice, and so that one was also very good, very informative.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I as soon as I knew I would be speaking with you, I figured that there'd be that kind of crossover from, passion and also education, right? Because it's really hard to separate. I'm sure when you're choosing books to read in your spare time, they are of course related to, your big passion, right? And that's really interesting that a couple of the books you mentioned were looking at kind of analyzing the why behind things. And I feel like that's really relevant for our prospective students is if they're considering enrolling in the diversity and inclusion training course at Ashton, and maybe asking themselves some tough questions about, like, why do I have that desire? Where does that interest come from? Do you have those answers for yourself about, like, why you were drawn to this area of education?
I do, and I consistently help leaders find those answers for themselves and for their organization. Moving from the industrial era into a social era is a big shift for a lot of organizations, and a lot of people are feeling challenged with that. So yeah, the Simon Sinek's and some of those other groups, they really, Brene Brown's, and I mean, they're the drivers for, this is how we're going to be able to pivot and adjust as organizational professionals, right? Yeah. So yes, it's all applicable information and learning.
Wonderful. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you so far. I'm really excited to hear about the material. I'm excited for the students who are taking the course. I think briefly we'll just jump over to Rika to speak from the admissions perspective about what the process is and course dates and fees and such. So Rika, you can take it away.
Hey guys, excellent info session. So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of our admissions team who isn't able to attend our info session right now. So the next start date for the diversity and inclusion training is on May 18, and it runs until July 6. Students must devote at least 3 hours per week to attend live webinars, and they are held on Tuesdays from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time. The registration fee for this course is $720 Canadian. And you can register anytime on our website at ashtoncollege.ca under our continuing education department, or email us anytime at ceinfo@ashtoncollege.ca. Again, that's ceinfo@ashtoncollege.ca. You can also call our admissions team at 604-899-1256 anytime during office hours, which is from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Rika. So absolutely, for our prospective students and attendees, we really encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or curiosities about the course or the admissions process. We're happy to answer those. Sharon, I think I've actually worked pretty much through my list of questions. Rika, did we have any questions from our Facebook Live attendees?
Yes, we do. We have quite a specific question from Facebook
Great.
Live. Someone's asking, will this course cover nonviolent communication or crisis management strategies, or will that be a different course?
Sharon?
Yeah, so we do begin to cover that a little bit in this course and how it might be applied to some of the allyship and social activism that might happen within an organization. Also about dealing with particular issues that students bring to the class during any type of a subject. Now, that's big work again. So we do have other classes that specifically talk about nonviolent communication, which I've been trained by a few fabulous people in. There's two different sets and formats for that. And then conflict resolution. So we have our conflict resolution, we have a negotiation course that talks a little bit about both of those as well. And then we have a mediation course. So we touch on it here. We talk about the whole spectrum of opportunities that there are to deal with. Yeah, when things aren't missing, when there's a lot of unhappiness or negativity, how to respond to harassment, these types of things. So we start to cover that in this class, but then again, we don't cover the entire system. So again, that's for conflict resolution or conflict resolution class, I think it's, yes. And then negotiation, we talk a lot more about the nonviolent communication because negotiation is all about prevention. And then mediation, we talk a lot about how to resolve that dispute face-to-face, and if not face-to-face, how to bring in other people to assist or other processes.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad that we were able to kind of cover some of the other courses that you teach. Ashton is so lucky to have you as an instructor because I think you teach like 4 or 5 courses with us, right? It's a whole bunch of different areas there.
Yeah, quite a few, including digital communications, which is coming up next.
Yes, yeah. Which I'm sure we'll have an online info session for at some point. I just love that. And especially when, you were sharing a little bit about your career background and your educational background, you mentioned psychology, law, social justice, so many different aspects. It really seems like you're able to put that into practice with the various courses that kind of all fall under human resources with our continuing ed department. It also sounds like there is a bit of crossover with a lot of the courses. So as you were saying, diversity and inclusion might touch on something that would then be fully delved into in, say, mediation or negotiation. Is that true? There's a little bit of cross-pollination there?
Absolutely. So in most of the human services and human resources or human relations classes, there is definite overlap, and then there is the deep dive courses that you can take. So if you gain an interest in really wanting to resolve things peacefully within that social justice, then you would probably take the conflict resolution class to find out a little bit more about, so what is that? What does that spectrum look like? What are some of the options and opportunities that have been developed? What kind of models would we look at or use, such as for diversity and inclusion in the workplace? You'd probably use both your employee engagement and relations group, but you would also use your ombuds group if you have one. And so we talk about a lot of that in the actual conflict resolution course. We just do an overview within diversity and inclusion.
For sure. Can students email you in between classes if they have questions like about career path maybe, and like what your journey was, and how you've gained all of this experience and modeled all of these different practices in your career experience?
Absolutely, yeah. So I try to do my best to answer within 24 hours, but you can always expect an answer within 72, just because depending on how many classes and things I have going on.
We're all human. Yeah.
Yeah, so I always appreciate the patience. But yes, absolutely. So we not only have a group chat room within the course itself where people can bounce ideas and questions and information off of each other as the student group, but then my email and access to an email in the class is also available.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. I think with that, it's a great note to end on. So we'll just wish everyone a great rest of your week. Thank you.